The Marcia Weekes Show. It's the Marcia Weekes Show. From Barbados to Africa, voices unite. Educate minds, elevate sight. It's the Marcia Weekes Show. It's the Marcia Weekes Show. From Barbados to Africa, voices unite. Educate minds, elevate sight. It's the Marcia Weekes Show. Talk truth, build roots, stories unfold. Motivate change, mobilize is the mode. That's the MR code. Hey, we grow and we know it.
God walks with me. He talks to me. I can hear him whispering words of wisdom to my mind. I have nothing to fear when he is near. Infinite spirit, eternal one, most high. I hear when God's calling me. I hear every word he says. He satisfies me with his mercies, and I rejoice his name and praise. Oh God of love, who reigns above, this is my humble plea. May you be ever with me. God is the key to life's open doors. Only he can cleanse iniquity and sanctify the soul, so that every word of his be heard from the rising of the sun until the nights are through. I hear when God's calling me. I hear every word he says. He satisfies me with his mercies, and I rejoice, God name and praise. Oh, God of love, who reigns above, this is my humble plea. May you be ever with me. God help me find the way through the changes in my life, and let my footsteps always be in the path of your shining light. Oh God of hosts, you are the Most High. I hear when God's calling me. I hear every word he says. He satisfies me with his mercies, and I rejoice his name and praise. Oh, God of love, who reigns above, this is my humble plea. May you be ever the me.
Pride that makes no And a great, great good evening to every single one of you joining us this Friday. Of course, a very special day, August the 14th. It comes one day after probably the most important day in the history of the world. And I'll come back to tell you what that was. All right. And I believe that if you all know anything, you might already know what that is when you talk about the most important day in the history of the world. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. All right. It was a joy just listening to Mr. Mark Lord again. God rest his soul. He's passed on to be with the Lord. And we're grateful for his contribution to our country. And as always, I am so appreciative of our national anthem and the component in the second line that speaks about the Lord having been the people's guide for past 300 years. With him still on the people's side, we have no doubts or fears. I want to emphasize that. With him still on the people's side. I want the government to hear it. I want the politicians across the nation to hear it. The Lord is on the people's side. That's a very serious component for you to have to deal with. Okay, so be careful how you handle his people. Okay, be very careful how you handle his people. The Lord is not very friendly and kind to those who do not look after his people. There's a verse in the scripture that says, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, they groan. You can determine from the response of the people who is ruling. And so we come to one of the most important components of our national identity, and that is our national pledge of Barbados. And I encourage you to repeat it as I do every Friday evening, to repeat it after me as you make a commitment again to your country, all right? I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. So I welcome you again to this evening show, and I'm looking forward to a great evening. As always, we have a very good panel, and we have a very good panel tonight as well. We're going to have Senator, I call her Senator. I've got so used to her being Senator that it's very difficult for me to ignore that component. I know it's not a big deal to her. I know, I get it. But let me just say, we'll be looking forward to having Senator Maxine McLean join us on the show tonight. And of course, I know you're looking forward and listening to me to announce the Apostle Linroy Scantlebury will also be joining us on the show tonight. So we're going to have a tremendously interesting show. We're going to be looking at the subject of the Barbados passports and U.S. visas. We'll be looking at some of the potential risks that our country could be faced where that is concerned. Of course, we're going to take a quick peep into the Domestic Terrorism Act, and there's a reason I want to take a quick peep into that this evening. And of course, I mean, you can't go a week in Barbados without something happening. And so we're going to take a quick look at the CIRCUS controversy. I am not sure which CIRCUS. If it's the one, well, don't let me disrespect our parliament. It's the CIRCUS out on the highway. Okay, we'll be taking a look at that, looking to see what government agencies were involved, the permits and regulatory requirements. And somewhere along the line, the process broke down. And, I would want to think that before those people spent the significant sum of money that they would have had to spend to get to Barbados, far less to set it up on the botanical gardens, which now I realize stretches all the way along the highway out by Lower State. Didn't realize that. I thought it was just in one area, but it looks like it's that whole region all across behind the new geriatric hospital. But we'll be taking a look at that as well. And then we want to take a look at the high cost of education. And this is something that is quite interesting, because one would have thought that we were still living in an era of free education. And then I want to, along with our guests, go into this matter again as we look at the matter of vaccines and Dr. Fauci. What are we learning now? And of course, there were some recent statements and testimony involving Dr. Fauci, and we want to know the facts, okay? The big question really is, after everything has emerged, what questions still deserve answers? And then, of course, we want to take a look at some of your comments as we go through the night this evening, okay? So that's a bit of a rundown of what we're looking at for tonight's show. I hope it's going to be of interest to you. I want to encourage you to like and share. As you always know, it is important for us that you do that, because it does have an impact on the algorithms on YouTube. And I'm not sure where Facebook is concerned, but you know, I'm still learning technology, and I guess I'll come around to some point of being able to grasp all of it. All right. So we're looking forward to a great night tonight. Please like and share. And of course, make your comments as I've been observing. I saw one comment tonight as I was preparing for the show and just waiting for the time to go live with you and to log on. And someone was taking a walk, I think they said, down memory lane. And it had something to do, I'm just trying to see if I can find it back here. It had something to do with painting, or let me see, pictures or something. Oh, here it is, I think. Here it is. This is Sharon. Sharon was going down memory, the photographs, etc. Who remembers splatter painting at primary school? And Sharon, when I read that, I thought to myself, who remembers potato painting? You remember those potato paintings we used to do when we used to cut the potatoes into different, you cut the potato in half and cut a different shape on the potato, and we would make our imageries and our paintings and so on with the potato. I don't know how many of you all remember that, are old enough to remember that. Maybe some of you are too young and don't even know what I'm talking about. But hopefully there's some of you that are old enough to remember those potato paintings that we used to do, okay? So we're going to be taking a look at some interesting things tonight. So let me greet some of you if I can. Of course, I won't be able to greet everybody, and please forgive me for that. I am not as good as Marcia is at this. I mean, she is just so eloquent when it comes to this area. And I am like, I wouldn't even worry to say what I'm like. Good evening, Judy. It's great to have you back with us tonight as well. Pleasure to have you with us. And we're looking forward, yes, ma'am, to a great show tonight. Monica Ince, yes. Thank you so much for being here. And Andrea Critchlow. Sharon, I've already mentioned you here, going back down memory lane, and there's some other things that I will hold on for now. Lucinda, Aline, God bless you too. Good evening to you. Thank you for being here and sharing the evening with us. Okay. Marcia Miller, good night to you as well. Yes, thank you. Like and share. And a great good evening to you, Angela, as well. Thank you. We are expecting some weather tonight. That's what they tell us, but it's still a blessed good evening. Absolutely, Marcia. Angela, sorry. And, we thank God for the rain. We do need the rain. It's been dry. We need our aquifers filled with proper water and not jobby water. We do need something coming into the country to make up for the crisis in water in St. Lucie. And we certainly are appreciative of whatever the Lord blesses us with. And even though I understand from the meteorologists that we are likely in the wee hours of the morning, not only to get showers, but it's possible that we may get some gusts that might get up to tropical storm winds. But we want to thank God for a safe night. as we all lie down. The scripture tells us that we will lie down and dwell in safely because the Lord is watching over us. You would expect me as a Christian minister to make reference to these areas, and I certainly am a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ and all that he's done for us at Calvary and what he has brought us into. That provision he has made, that we can expect the Lord, we can expect Almighty God to protect us and to protect our country. That is why it is enshrined in our national anthem as well. Good evening to you, Murray Fully, 60, is that 61? Yes, XX. Good evening to you as well. That's enshrined in the national anthem. The Lord has been the people's guide for past 300 years. And we are not here talking about some creator or some deity. We're talking about the Lord. We are specific in what we are referring to. All right. So Beverly Prescott, great to have you with us again tonight as well. And Jacqueline Aline, a joy to have all of you. Taroni, I saw you earlier. God bless you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support so much. And we really do appreciate every single one of you. And, Marcia had a great week last week. I'm sure she touched on it over the Sunday and the Monday. I haven't had a chance to go through all of those shows, because of sometimes the schedule that you keep. But we are looking forward to having her back with us on Sunday. Jacqueline Aline, God bless you. I'm a big girl. Yes, some rain would really be good to cool down the heat. And not only that, I'm a big girl. Also, we need it to wash down some of that dust. All right, we need it to wash down some of that dust. And just let me say that I'm not a meteorologist, but I do follow very, very closely what the meteorologists share with us. And from my understanding, the dust that we have been having, praise the Lord, is one of the things that is keeping these systems from developing, along with something called wind shear that is coming from the west to the east. And I understand it's very strong. And so it's knocking the tops of these systems off, from what I'm told. And as a result, they cannot develop. So while there's a train of tropical waves coming off of the coast of Africa, coming toward the Caribbean, so far, we have not been informed of any significant development that would risk our family. Thank you, Taroni, for asking with regards to my wife and family. I really do appreciate you guys doing that. I thank God for people who care enough to even ask the question. Oh, and incidentally, can I blow my own trumpet a little bit here? Just to let you know, because I don't even think Marcia was aware of it, but just yesterday, which would be the 13th, was my birthday. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. All I will say is that I have a lot of experience, okay? I will just leave it at that, Taroni. So thank you very, very, very much. And as well, Jacqueline, for asking with regards to my family. We really do appreciate it. And, we need to appreciate these things as a community. We need to appreciate people asking about us and looking out for us and looking out for our interests. It is something that we just simply cannot lose in Barbados. So welcome here again to you, Matthew Sainsbury. Good to have you on tonight. And let me just take a couple more. Calendar 2463. Great to have you with us again tonight. Marvel Lashley, thank you so much. And yes, we are looking forward to a great night tonight. And thank you for your wonderful blessings. Just let me slip on down here, pick up a couple more. Thank you, Taroni. Thank you. You're going to get real excellent. Thank you so very much. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes. Mavis, she's still fighting. Mavis, thank you for asking how she's doing. She's still fighting day to day. Some days she's pretty good. Other days, she's very weak. She's still fighting through the issues and still looking after her diet and so on very carefully as we continue to prepare to return to Colombia. We do have to return, and we were hoping to have been there by now, but we're still working on raising the funds to get back there. And I'll be doing a couple of things in the not too distant future, God willing, to assist her with that. Shirley, thank you for being here tonight. And is this Clarison Clark? Clarison Clark. You remember those potato days, Clarison? I really do. I really do. And I'll tell you what else I remember. I remember when my mother, you all may not be aware of it, but the Edna Nichols Center in St. Peter in Boscobel is named after my mother. She was the principal there for some years. And while she was there, I was attending school there with her, the Boscobel Girls' School. I was the only boy in the girls' school, but that's another subject for another time. And she used to teach us about shops. How many of you all remember setting up your shops? You know, and we were learning how to run our own shops and supermarkets and all that kind of stuff from early. Okay, early. We have intrusion here that I am going to remove. We have to be very careful. Not only here on the show, just before coming on, I received some notifications of persons attempting to hack some people's phones and so on. So we have to be very careful. Dave, you will help me look out for any strange. I just deleted one, a very strange appearance that turned up on the show just now. And if you see any of them, Dave, please go right ahead, delete them and block them. So welcome to the show tonight. We are happy to have all of you. Please remember to like and share. Now, I want to touch on a few things tonight as I move into the session. Let me start by saying on the show last Friday, we had Mr. Gaskin, I believe, on the show. And Mr. Gaskin shared a number of things with us as it related to bed bugs and mosquitoes and mice and rats. And I want to say how appreciative I was for how appreciative I was. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Yes. She was a wonderful person. She was a great lady. I can tell you that. Absolutely great lady. And I thank God for having the opportunity, for them to be my parents. And my dad taught me a lot about the sugar industry. I spent many days with him at Andrew's factory, and got my mouth burned off with liquor when I should have obeyed him. But you live and you learn. Amen. So wonderful. Thank you. So thank you. I'm a big girl for your belated birthday greetings. Thank you so very much. So as I was saying, I want to touch on a few things tonight, and I want to begin quickly as I was commenting on Mr. Gaskin's remarks last week. And you will recall on that show, we talked about a number of solutions for people's ailments. Now, let me say, we do not offer medical advice on this show outside of the information that we have gathered from medical personnel who are in many instances unable to be on our show. People like Dr. Berg, Dr. McCullough, Dr. Campbell. These are experts in their field and persons who are brilliant at what they advise. And Dave, I sent you two pictures. I'd like you to put up the first one for me, please, that says eat right for your blood type. 4 blood types, 4 diets. And this is a book that is done not by a medical doctor who is ready to prescribe drugs for you. This is Dr. Peter J. Let me get that right. D'Adamo. Adamo, I think is his name, with Catherine Whitney. He's a doctor. And in this book, he recommends a lot of natural remedies for many of our physical ailments that the doctors I understand, who in their oath are committed to pharmaceutical industry drugs and are not in a position to officially recommend anything other than a drug. And drugs are designed for all intents and purposes, by all of the people I've spoken with in the medical profession to treat symptoms, and to keep you on a program to treat symptoms. That's what the doctors themselves have advised me. And I don't need to bring people onto the show to establish that one iota, because it is easy for persons to do the research. It is easy for individuals to connect with doctors. And no, Dr. Campbell is a gentleman, Sharon. He was one of the leading voices during the pandemic on YouTube, and he began supportive of the treatments that were recommended by Dr. Fauci, and then he parted away from it because of the deaths that were occurring and the adverse effects, multitude of adverse effects that were resulting as a result of the treatments. But we'll come to that in a little later on in the show. The second image I want you to put up for me, Dave, if you can, is the book I sent to you as well. And this book is available, The Natural Healing Handbook. And this is available on Amazon. And this is done by a naturalist who has over 35 or 40 years of experience in dealing with natural remedies. This book is somewhere around 35 or 40 US dollars for this book. You can get it on Amazon, and it will give you the natural healing for many, many conditions in our lives. Okay, so we don't come here to offer any medical advice. We simply will indicate what has been told us, and we will always advise you to consult with your physician, your doctors, or your expert naturalist as it relates to anything that you may be engaging or you may be experiencing. But one thing is sure, there is not a drug on the planet that does not have side effects. That is a fact, not a drug. And I've always been amused when I sit down. I remember one year I was in the Cayman Islands and I was watching television. And let's just say I was watching for about an hour. Out of that hour, I saw 20 minutes of what I was watching and 40 minutes of advertising. And out of those 40 minutes of advertising, 85% of it was by this pharmaceutical industry. And when I listened to those ads, I began to wonder to myself if it wouldn't be better to just go along and suffer from what you are suffering from because of the potential adverse effects of these drugs. I remember one hilarious one that was given, and one person actually tried to put my wife on, one of them many years ago, for dealing with depression. And the drug that they were marketing was supposed to help you with treatment for depression. And one of the major side effects was manic depression. And I had to laugh. I had to laugh. I said, so I'm going to take a drug to treat my depression that's going to make my depression manic? That was so funny. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I think one of the other side effects was suicidal tendencies. And I remember when I was in Trinidad, and one doctor, my wife went for a checkup, and she was going through the stages of change, women that you all know about, the menopausal and all this stuff. And the doctor, when I dropped her off, and and I went about my business to do some things. And I came back, and the doctor's secretary said to me, I need you inside the room. And when I got inside the room, she handed me this bag. It was a bag of drugs to be now released, new drugs that were released to treat the situation my wife was going through. But she said to me, she cannot take these unless she is on the constant observation, because two of the side effects, one was suicide and one was manic depression. And, I thanked her, shake my head. And as my wife and I were walking out, she took it from my hand. And as she passed the garbage bin, she just dropped it in the bin. And that was the last we saw of that. So I tell you, yeah, absolutely, David. The world we live in is a world of great deception. And we're going to be looking at some of that deception tonight, and you can be sure of that. Okay, so I just wanted to clear the air on this, because I do take what I do on this show very seriously. I am a Christian minister. I'm obligated to the truth. I am not here to share anybody's subjective opinion. I'm here to share the truth. That is why we examine carefully what we are hearing with regards to Dr. Fauci and other things that we'll come to later in the show. Now, for a few minutes, I want to touch on a couple of things. First of all, I sent you a image, a document, really, not an image. I sent you a document to do with the current Domestic Terrorism Act that is currently now before Senate. Of course, there is no surprise that it passed Parliament. I saw some of you all referring to Parliament as a circus, and I am not here to verify or deny that. I guess sometimes the way they behave in there, they might look like a gathering of clowns, but I don't know. I can't say that. I have to be respectful, because one day I might very well be in there in a position, that some people in there, I don't know. I'm not prepared to stop representing the people of my nation and my country and my flag. I will do so, as some people will say, I will die with my boots on. And I'm not going to be going anywhere in a hurry. But this domestic terrorism bill caught my attention. And as I looked at it, I began to do some investigation into it. And a couple of things caught my attention. Now, first of all, let me say, and I should have said from the beginning, I should have commended the Prime Minister. Let me stick a pen and pause. I should have commended the Prime Minister for accepting, and I believe it has been accepted, the renaming of the school in Bayland to the Sir Garfield Sobers Primary School. I want to thank her and her team for the honor that she has bestowed upon Sir Garfield Sobers. But I still feel that along with that school, that there can be some even higher element that he could be connected with. Not that school is not a very high element, don't get me wrong, but I still feel that there's some aspect. There is a stand at the Kensington named after him. Yes, I get it. His statue is there, but I commend her for that. But I will just leave it at that. Okay, I want to commend her for that, and I don't do that. There's not always a lot to commend her for, because we do not look at things just happening in Barbados. We look at things happening around the world, including her travels and what she says outside of the country and the image she paints outside of the country. I listen to people talking here in the Caribbean about how we need her as the Prime Minister of the Caribbean. And I hope to God that never happens, because, you will always hear people talk well about me outside of my family. But if you want to find out about me, ask my family. Talk to my family. And they have good things to say about me and bad things to say about me. Outside, people tend to be always pleasant with you and say nice things about you to others. So I don't take that with a pinch of salt, okay? So I this caught my attention. This Domestic Terrorism Act caught my attention, and I read through it. It was only 5 pages that I could locate. I cannot locate the full document as yet, but a couple of things caught my attention in the 5 pages. And Dave, if you could go to page 4, section 2 of the Act, and I'd like you to enlarge it as best you can, section 2. And there it says in section 2, in this Act, ammunition has the meaning assigned to it by section 2 of the Firearms Act, Cap 179. So you can see a relationship between the Domestic Terrorism Act and the Firearms Act. There's also a relationship between the Domestic Terrorism Act and the Anti-Terrorism Act in Barbados. There are relationships between the two. It says the Domestic Terrorism Act means an act which A, constitutes a serious criminal offense, and that has to be defined, and B, satisfies any of the following conditions. 1, it is committed in a public place. Hold on. And a public place, by definition here, should I say, no, before we get to that, it says with the intention of causing the public or a segment of the public to fear for their safety or safety of others, or recklessly or without regard to the safety of the public. And then 2, it is committed in a public place and is motivated by bias against race, listen carefully, nationality, ethnic origin, sex or sexual orientation, gender, or religion. Or, and it goes on to speak about the unlawful importation or possession of firearms. But it defines, listen carefully, it defines public place includes a highway or road or any other premises or place to which at the material time members of the public have or are permitted to have access, whether by payment or otherwise. The reason I raise this is to send a warning to my Christian brethren and ministers, because we are firm believers that there are only 2 sexes, male and female, created he, them. Not 3, not 64, not 18, not 22. 2. According to Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God made male and female. So, and that is going to be expressed in a church or a conference or a meeting room where persons, the public, have access without payment. It's free. So I sent a warning to the church and to pastors and ministers of the gospel. The second aspect is sexual orientation. Christians believe only in male and female. They believe only in heterosexual relationships. In the scripture, both in the Old and the New Testament, homosexuality and lesbianism are condemned. In Galatians chapter 5, verses 19, it is spoken of, and again, it is spoken of in the Old Testament as being an abomination. Romans chapter 1 also speaks of men doing men what is unseemly, women with women doing what is unseemly. They will reap their consequences in the judgment of God. So if that's the case, sexual orientation persons may feel threatened or fear for their life because I have to preach that message. Now, listen, I have to tell you the truth, but I understand in the world that we live in today that when you tell people the truth, they conclude they don't love you. I mean, you don't love them. When you have to tell a child the truth about a fire that will burn their hand off, or something, if they ingest it, it will kill them, that is not an act of hatred. That is an act of love. And as Christians, we are required to tell the sinner about his sin, because if we don't, God will destroy him in hell. You may not like the subject, but the reality is that as Christians and as ministers of the gospel, we are obligated to God to preach the truth. And we will do so without fear of anyone. And then, of course, to speak about gender. Now, here we talk about all these multitude of different genders that people are coming up with now. And I just caution you, because here's the thing. If you're not careful, we can see that there is a risk involved in the ambiguity in some areas of this domestic terrorism bill, Domestic Terrorism Act. Now, I don't think the bill is inherently dangerous or unreasonable. The problem is that it creates an exceptionally serious offense with exceptionally serious penalties. The government has a persuasive argument that someone who deliberately sprays gunfire into a crowded public place is doing more than committing an ordinary murder or firearms offense. They are creating terror throughout the surrounding community, and examples were cited by the Attorney General when he made the case, and that's quite compelling. But I would want the Senate to tighten three things before giving the legislation an unqualified endorsement. Number one, the threshold for reckless disregard for public safety should be extremely high. The threshold for reckless disregard for public safety should be extremely high. Secondly, the bill should make unmistakably clear that legitimate political expression, peaceful protests, dissent, and industrial action cannot become terrorism simply because they are disruptive or unpopular. Listen carefully to me. Thirdly, consecutive life imprisonment should only apply where the additional domestic terrorism element is clearly established beyond the underlying offense. Okay, so these are some things that I would suggest the Senate to consider before they clear this through the Senate. When you talk about reckless disregard, that needs to be carefully scrutinized. Carefully scrutinized. Okay? Risk to ordinary citizens. That could be low if it's narrowly interpreted. So there needs to be clarification with regards to this. There's a risk of overexpansion of terrorism. So we need to be able to establish the real legal concerns. Then you have the risk to legitimate political protests, which should be expressly protected. Now, I know we're dealing with an administration that doesn't like to be criticized. It doesn't like people to say anything against it or anything of that sort, okay? And so we have to be very careful when it comes to these aspects of this bill, of this act, okay? I'm just looking through. Those were the couple of areas I wanted to comment on with regards to the Domestic Terrorism Act. And there's much more that I can share. You have to ask, what is terrorism? What is defined as terrorism? There needs to be a clear, unambiguous definition where terrorism is concerned, and terrorism should describe conduct that terrorizes the public regardless of whether the motivation is political. It terrorizes the public. Under this approach, indiscriminate gun violence can legitimately be called domestic terrorism. Okay, and there are other things that I can engage on. What is really, the difference between this bill and the existing Anti-Terrorism Act? I could get into that, but I want to touch on a couple of other things this evening. So I will engage that. I see, Dave, you want me to repeat. I guess you want me to repeat those three areas that we would want the Senate to give careful consideration to and tighten before they give unqualified endorsement to this act. Number one, the threshold for reckless disregard for public safety should be extremely high. That's number one. Number two, the bill should make unmistakably clear that legitimate political expression, peaceful protests, dissent, and industrial action cannot become terrorism simply because they are disruptive or unpopular. And thirdly, consecutive life imprisonment should only apply where the additional domestic terrorism element is clearly established beyond the underlying offense. Those are the three areas that I want to touch on this evening with regards to that bill. Okay. Now I have a few minutes left, so let me move quickly on to my next area this evening. The next area I want to touch on is the area to do with this matter of the visas and Barbados passport. Now, I did a bit of research, and as you know, the United States has begun to carefully observe what is happening in the Caribbean, and they have already issued blunt and straightforward warnings to several countries in the Caribbean with regards to what is referred to as citizenship by investment. And while there is fundamentally nothing wrong with the aspect that I can identify of citizenship by investment, I believe that there needs to be a tightening of this perspective. Now, give you grant, Barbados, as far as I'm aware, does not have a citizen by investment program, as far as I am aware. I stand to be corrected. If any of you know officially if there is a CBI program for Barbados, please put it in the chat and let me know. But as far as I'm aware, I do not believe Barbados has one. However, there are several other Caribbean countries, including Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia, that do have CBIs. And the United States, rightly so, because, you know, a leader of a country has a number one obligation: the safety and well-being of his people. Okay? Now, these countries, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, and St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Lucia, they have CBI, citizenship by investment. But on the 21st of January 2026, the United States Department of State paused issuance of immigrant visas to nationals of 75 countries. And included in those 75 countries was Barbados, the Bahamas, Belize, Jamaica, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. Now, this is not a ban or a pause per se on visitor visas. This is on immigrant visas, not on visitor visas, or what is generally referred to as tourist visas. However, from what I'm being told, it is having an impact. And it's having an impact because the United States cannot verify persons not born in these countries who are citizens by investment, who present themselves as citizens of the country, and then they don't know anything about their background in terms of the country that they come from. So the United States considers this, to some degree, a risk with regards to the safety in the United States, and they are scrutinizing very carefully this matter to do with the visas that are being issued in the Caribbean. Now, you may wonder, why am I raising that tonight as it relates to Barbados? Well, let me explain to you why. Our Prime Minister, in a recent speech in Ethiopia, spoke to the African continent and the countries of the African continent and indicated, as far as I remember, I stand to be corrected because I am not perfect, that there are no visa requirements for people flying out of Africa. Sorry, I'm just getting a little buzzing here in my headset. Okay, Dave, if you can confirm if you're hearing me now. Are you hearing me now? Okay. Just getting a bit of a buzz coming out of my headset. And I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I can live with it. Are you hearing a buzzing, Dave, or am I the only person hearing it? It could be my headset. Clean. Okay, great. All right, well, I will live with the buzz in my ear. Now, the reason, as I was mentioning, I do apologize for that break in transmission due to a technical fault. For those of you who have been around for a while, we remember hearing that many years ago from CBC when televisions were black and white. The film has slipped off the sprocket and they would give you the film with a banana peel underneath. Remember that? But then they would tell you normal service will resume as soon as possible. So I do apologize. Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, great. Wonderful. Right. So as I was saying, the Prime Minister opened the door to Barbados to all the African countries without the necessity for a visa. Now, to verify or to qualify for a visa, you will have to establish certain things with the country you want to visit. You would have to establish whether you could support yourself in the country you're visiting for the time that you're going to be there. You're going to have to indicate whether you have roots in the country you're coming from to know that you're going to be returning there. They want to know if you have family in the country where you're visiting, a number of different questions they will ask. How many times have you been? They will look back at your history and so on. All right. Now, our Prime Minister, or our government, let me say, has made it clear that people traveling in from Africa do not need a visa. Now, and as such, they can come here and live here in Barbados. My understanding is just for about 6 months, and you can acquire citizenship in Barbados and, by extension, a Barbados passport. You can take that Barbados passport now as a citizen in a year or two and go to the U.S. Embassy, having made your appointment, and apply for a U.S. visa, showing that you're working in Barbados, you have been living in Barbados, you have a job in Barbados or whatever, and could possibly receive a visa. Now, that is a risk to the United States because they don't know if you are a terrorist or not. And last time I started to treat to this matter of terrorists coming in from Africa, there was a whole lot of, not a whole lot, one or two persons didn't like it. And I advised them to do their due diligence and go and do their research. Because ISIS has groupings in Africa, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Uganda. ISIS has elements there. Go do your research. Hezbollah as well. Elements of the Islamic jihadists that are funded and supported and armed by terrorist groups. So we have to now be very careful with our passport, whether now the integrity of the passport of Barbados is being put at risk. We're potentially, because there are lessons we can learn from the CBI as it relates to the concerns that are expressed elsewhere in the Caribbean, we don't want our country and our passport to be seen as a risk, because many of you have family living in America. Many of our parents traveled to the United States, got their green cards, settled there, et cetera, so as to be able to help us have a good living back here in Barbados. It happened in the United Kingdom as well. As a matter of fact, the United States is not the only country raising concerns. The European Union is raising concerns, and several European Union countries are now requiring you to have a visa for some countries that never had to have a visa out of the Caribbean before to get into any of the European countries, whether it be Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, or wherever you're going. Okay? And that is a fact. Now, it could mean, I'm not saying it will, but it could put at risk our capacity to acquire a visa for any of these countries if we cannot justify, or we cannot show that the persons applying are authentically Barbadian citizens and not citizens coming in from another country as a result of something to do with coming into the country without a visa and etc. Okay, so I'm just looking at it there, Dave. Could you make that a little bigger? I don't know if you can make that a little bigger. My screen is quite a small one at the moment. I have it sharing. So Barbados has made it easier than ever for our African passport holders to experience its world-class beaches and vibrant culture. Citizens of African countries can enter the country completely visa-free. So there you have it. Find the full list of visa-exempt countries. So there you have it. Okay? It's not a conspiracy theory. It is a fact. Somebody is putting here on the chat, Sean Cool, the problem is Nigerians cannot enter the US. They are banned from entering. So, Sean, they can enter Barbados. They can spend some time here, acquire a Barbados passport, and then attempt to enter United States. And what does that mean? That means that you could be putting the Barbados passport at risk, and that means that you could be affecting the integrity of the Barbados passport. Now, the big question that we are asking then is, could government policy today affect how the Barbados passport is viewed internationally tomorrow? And just like this circus fiasco that we're going to go into in just a few moments, once I have my next guest join me, one wonders if people just get up in the morning with a brainstorm. What planning, what expertise, what advice, what guidance, what due diligence has gone into all of these decisions that have the capacity to affect us long term, not just today. What is this that I'm now seeing? Esther Reed is saying that last year she had to get a visa to travel to the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom has never, we have never required a We have never required a visa to enter the United Kingdom before. We've never had to get a visa to go into the United Kingdom. So now we must ask ourselves the question. We must ask ourselves the question now as whether or not, um, whether or not, sorry, I'm still getting that buzzing in my ear. So I'm going to try to switch this headset here. Let me see if I can just. Let me see if I can just turn this off or unplug it. Let me see if it's that giving me the problem. Actually, that is it. That was what is giving me the problem. So I think things should be back to normal. So just let me change out here. I hope that you can still continue hearing me. And I think I've been able to rectify the matter. So this is thank you, Dave, for confirming that. This is the crisis that we could potentially face in the days to come if we have not learned our lessons from the CBI concerns elsewhere in the Caribbean. The CBI is coming on to increase U.S. scrutiny because there are questions being asked about the previous nationality, residence, and travel history of persons. So Caribbean nationals may now face more stringent screening even where their country does not operate CBI. Okay, now one of the things about this show that I've heard Marcia say over and over is that this show is Emma, educate, mobilize, motivate, and agitate. So there's an aspect of education, and as a minister, I am required to do a lot of research because as a Christian minister, I engage many different people of many different walks of life, of many different countries. Even when I tour different countries and I minister in different countries, and people come to you and ask you concerning legitimate concerns. And as a Christian minister, we ought to be able to either answer their questions or be able to direct them to the appropriate individuals who can be able to give them assistance. So I do a lot of research. And I wish I had the time tonight. I don't think I will, because I wanted to touch on this matter of the 2030 agenda, so that you could see for yourself what is being expressed globally with regards to the 2030 agenda. But I don't believe I will have enough time to get into that tonight because I am waiting for my next guest to join me, my first guest to join me. As soon as they do, I will go over to them. But you know what, Dave, until I get that, can I get that done? Because we always hear the government and the prime minister speak of the 2030 agenda. Now, I have a, a video I want to share with you tonight. At least I will do so until my first guest comes into the back room and joins me. I will share this video with you. Dave, that is the one I sent you, and I believe it is 2 minutes and 31 seconds long. We don't necessarily have to share the whole thing, but it's entitled The 2030 Agenda. It's the one entitled The 2030 Agenda. I hope that not, I don't think it's that one. It should be one with something on it looking like meat. If necessary, I can resend it to you, or I can share it. I believe. Let me see. I can share it from my end. Let me see. Just going to wait for you to see Do you have it? It should show 2030 agenda, the total control. And just confirm if you have it. I thought I did send it to you. If not, I will do so now so that you can. I really prefer if it is possible for you to Yeah, I did send it to you. I did send it to you. Um, Let me just see here what you're saying to me. Um, okay. Well, I'll share it. Let me see if I can share it from my screen then, Dave, because I have it here up on my screen. Okay. So let me see how I can do this. Let me see if I can pause it. First of all, yes. Okay. And let me see, Dave, if I can share it from my screen. Share screen. Let me see. Let me see if yes, I think this is it. Dave, you can confirm to me whether you are seeing it or not, and maybe the viewers can confirm as well. Now, I don't know how to make it larger. Let me see. Zoom in. Let me see if I can make it a little larger. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can get it done. No, it's not that one. Yes, here we are. Are you hearing anything, Dave? Let's see here. Are you hearing anything now? No? Oh, there. Okay. All right. Well, I'll do that, and I'll have to do that another time then. I'll have to do that another time. But that's the one I really wanted. Dave, I'm going to resend it to you to see if maybe you can get it back up again. Let me just see if you can do that. Okay, I just resent it to you. See if you're able to load it in. And if you can, we'll come back to that. I think I'm seeing my first guest in the back room. But just see if you can get it, Dave, and I may come back to that later in the program. All right, but it is this 2030 agenda. This agenda where you can my headset is gone again. I'm so sorry for this technical difficulties we're having. So I'm gonna have to go into my. Okay. All right. I hopefully I'll be able to hear Maxine when she starts. Just waiting for her to give me a signal that she's ready to come on in. Okay. You can give me a thumbs up, Maxine, as soon as you're ready. Dave, we'll come back to that video. I'm so sorry about these technical difficulties we're having. I normally have this, but But this is something we've been hearing about all the time, 2030 agenda. And this agenda is based on controlling the citizens of the world. And this is not conspiracy theory. These are facts. And I'm just sorry that I didn't have that video ready, that I could have shared it with you. So, Madam Maxine, can I bring you in? Let me add you to the stage here. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you now. I'm not sure. Dave, are you hearing her? Because Maxine, I've been having some challenges with my headset.
Okay.
So it may be that you're fine. And Dave is saying he's hearing you loud and clear. So
yes, my system
I'm
is
just
working.
going to reset my Bluetooth to take over from my headset. I keep my headset on to just block out external noises. So just let me see if it's connected. It should tell me. Okay, go ahead and chat and speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Let me.
Are you hearing me?
I know what I need to do. I have to go back into my settings and change my speaker to my Bluetooth.
See how that works. Okay, let me just say good evening while you are.
I can hear you loud and clear now. Yes, I am.
So don't let me speak too loudly because I might deafen you.
No, you can go right ahead. This is actually softer than the headset.
And I was listening to you. I was running a little bit late, but I sent Marcia a note to let her know. At least I hope she saw it, that I might have been about 10 minutes late. So, well, good evening. As usual, it is good to be here with you. And so much is happening on so many levels around here, but the saga continues in terms of what I would describe nicely as bleeps and blunders. They're much worse than that. But wow. Before that, I just wanted to comment on something that you were talking about, and that's the whole issue of citizenship by investment. Very quickly, and you're correct. To this point, we do not have such an initiative in Barbados. We have special entry permits, etc. And I noticed that there may be efforts being made to make it easier for some people. But I just want, for clarity of understanding, to draw a distinction between a visa waiver and an access to passports, because visa waivers are intended to facilitate travel between two countries. Even though I can go to Ghana, and I would say this because that process starts, that kind of negotiation started under me. I remember signing the Schengen Agreement, which allowed us, at the time, I'm trying to remember, I think Bahamas might have been one of the countries who signed this. Is back in like 2014. I don't keep dates and things in my head. But I remember when we signed that, because anybody who understood the process of getting a visa to a country in Europe, how difficult it was. And so we had that visa waiver agreement. Now, of course, for those countries that have citizenship by investment, and you correctly pointed out that the European Union, countries in the European Union have been saying to those countries, you have to either cancel that or do something about your program, or you will lose that waiver, that visa waiver agreement. So that's critical to understand. What, as you also correctly said, we have to do is to properly protect our passport, which at this point in time is considered a very valuable passport. And if we get people of nebulous backgrounds, because this is one of the problems that some of the countries in the OECS have had, that you have had countries where they have been looking for citizens, fugitives, or whatever, and allegations were made. And in fact, in some evidence, because I remember when I was Foreign Minister, having had a request from a country about a holder of one of those passports. And without getting into the details, I told the people that they had to ensure that they dealt with those matters between the two countries. I didn't see that Barbados should be getting drawn into that arrangement. So I think you've raised a very valid point. The only concern, or the main concern I have, is that we as a country, even though we do not have such a citizenship by investment arrangement, we might get drawn into the problem.
Correct.
As part of a family of nations here in the region and within CARICOM.
Yes.
So that is one of the concerns that we have, that we have to look at. But so that is what I wanted to share. But what I think you probably, and I remember I found it quite amusing. I have to say to Marcia and Dave, whoever they were able to get to prepare those, I call them cartoons or images of the circus, whether it is a circus, cabinet circus, or whatever. I mean, so many people have been talking about those, but we laugh. It is funny to look at, but I would also say it is frightening, because we have had a tradition as a nation of being rules-based, driven by proper procedures, and operating according to the laws, etc. But here you have, it looked like too many clowns spoil the broth, criminal cook, sorry, spoil the broth, because I don't know how many years ago, but I believe the same Suarez circus came to Barbados. I have never gone to it. I remember passing on the highway, and at that time they had a few animals and whatever, and you saw, but I don't recall going. But during my lifetime, we have had more than one circus here. I would suggest to you, Reverend Ferdinand, that in recent years, I would have thought that Barbados became much more quote unquote sophisticated in how we do things and in how we were able to ensure that our rules and regulations have been followed. What I find passing strange, though, I don't know if you had a chance to hear it this morning, but this morning I listened to the news on VOB. I'll call the station, because I listen on mornings between CBC and VOB. I hear the news. I didn't hear it on CBC. I start at 5 o'clock with CBC and go 5:30 to VOB, and I switch back and forth till 8:30. Generally, once I am able to do that, I'm at home and I can do that. I listen to both stations. But on VOB this morning, I heard one of the principals, I would call that, I would use the word, Mr. Suarez. I can't remember his first name. I would have to go back and I actually captured it on I recorded it, but by the time I got my phone to record the message, the introduction of the news item had passed. But the gentleman was making the point that he actually received permission. He said that he'd gotten permission except for health. He'd gotten permission from I think he said environment and planning it was. I made a note of it somewhere. And in essence, he was saying that he got permission from several government entities. And one of the things that I looked at in terms of this, I actually sat down, spoke to one of my former cabinet colleagues to see if I was actually looking at the right thing, because I was asking the question, where do we get permission, for this kind of situation? And I was told, yes, you get from health, you get from customs, because if you're importing if you're importing items, you know, the equipment.
Late last night, Starcom Network News spoke to Ruben Suarez.
Okay, let's. I'm hearing the recording. So if Dave has it, let him play. I think that's what Dave was playing.
Yeah, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Late last night, Starcom Network News spoke to Ruben Suarez, one of the directors of the Suarez Brothers Circus, which has been closed since Sunday following concerns reportedly raised by the Barbados Water Authority. Mr. Suarez says the closure has left him and his team confused and disappointed. He maintains that the circus received the necessary permissions to operate at the Botanical Gardens, the extension at the Belle St. Michael, including venue approval from the Ministry of Environment, National Beautification, and Fisheries.
We have permission from the office that administrates the Botanical Gardens. That is the Minister of Environment, National Beautification, and Fisheries. That's who give us the permission to be at the Botanical Garden. Well, we have permission from Planning and Development too. We have permission from all the permission that we supposed to get it. We get it, you know. The only permission that at the visit we not get is the health people. All right.
Mr. Suarez outlined two main areas of concern: the daily losses being incurred, thousands of US dollars, he says, and the circus crew's disappointment.
Well, up to now, we don't have the exactly amount, you know, but it's 1,000 and thousands of US. They are questioning about what's going to happen if they don't want us here. What's the problem? Well, up to now, we don't know exactly what's the issue over there, you know, because we have, how I tell you, we have all the permissions.
Regarding relocation, Mr. Suarez says there is only one space that has caught their interest: the Garrison Savannah, calling it the ideal location.
The really option that we are interested in is the Garrison Savannah. Okay, that's the only place that works for us for our installation, you know, and our logistic. And the land is good. We have parking over there. We have light. We have all the conditions, water for sure. All the conditions that we need for move. It's the only option that we are interested in, but we are still waiting for the confirmation.
That was Ruben Suarez, director of the Suarez Brothers Circus. Philippe Amy, Starcom Network News.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Dave. Now, what we are hearing is that the circus got permission from various agencies, government entities, except health. And all I can say is that I would have expected, and I would, after I made the initial comment, I will share what I would have experienced as a former cabinet member in certain situations. I would have expected that before a final approval, because you have multiple agencies, health, you know, environment, and so on. I would have expected that some mechanism would have been used to ensure that all permissions were given. Because if you have 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 permissions to be given from 4, 5, 6 or 10 agencies, then if one does not approve, the process is not complete. And therefore, my expectation would be that an efficient way of doing it is something that I saw operate in situations when I was a minister. And I know that the former Prime Minister, from the Stewart, did this as minister responsible for town planning. That because you had multiple agencies involved, I recall on multiple occasions, the bringing together of the various agency officials to sit down and consider an application jointly. So in other words, rather than take a file and send it from health to agriculture, you know, if you were looking at a piece of land to be subdivided or something, or in this case, the permission from health to finance or home affairs, because also you would expect that permissions have to be given for people to come in and work, because the performers, the persons who manage the facilities, etc., they basically are coming into Barbados to work. And so to me, a sensible arrangement would have been to pull all of them in one room. The government has multiple conference rooms across the public service. Sit down in a conference room. You could use the cabinet office if push comes to shove. And, where cabinet meets. You sit in there at Bay Street or wherever, and you go through the requirements so that everybody knows, okay, these are the health considerations. These are the custom considerations. These are our concerns as immigration. These are the things they have to do. And once you have completed that, you can say approval granted or not. Now, of course, the question I would have to ask, are there any possibilities of some objections being overruled or overturned or ignored? And I would probably say yes, depending, I suppose, some agencies, for example, if you think in terms of town planning, and I know that the town planning typically falls under the office of the Prime Minister, and where you have your technocrats making certain decisions, those decisions are made, but they can be reviewed by the office of the Prime Minister. So that is my concern. Now, meme at meme-F41NW. The garrison is not good enough for the Independence Parade, but good enough for the circus. Things that make you go, Now, I am sure I saw a comment by somebody who has interest in horse racing about this. And the question is, what is the length of time that this circus was planning to be on the island? And how, if the garrison is granted as an alternate site, what impact will that have on the horse racing calendar? So there are a lot of things here, but it really boggles the mind that you can have a situation like this occur, and it would be interesting for someone, I believe, if I remember correctly, and you can help me with this, Pastor Ferdinand, did I understand that the Prime Minister has appointed one of her cabinet colleagues to address this matter?
I think I heard something about one of the ministers.
Minister Cadell?
I think so. I think I heard that sometime either today or yesterday, but I can't swear to it. But I did
think
hear
I heard something like that. But
yeah.
That is the carrot, is the tiger or the lion before the something? Because I'm thinking in terms of circuses. No, but to me, these are, maybe it's my mind, my training in management, my mindset. But these are, to me, there's an orderly way in which things ought to be done. And if they are done in that manner, we would have less fiascos, less stops and starts, because it is just not making sense. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are, sir, but I listened to Mr. Suarez just now again, and he made it abundantly clear that outside of all of these things, he is very concerned that his operation is losing money. It is losing money because they have sold tickets for shows. And so they were expecting to be operating. What's going to happen now? Are they going to, and even if they extend the time to cover the days and reschedule those sold tickets, offering people alternate dates, they have incurred expenses being here. for the period of time that they have had to shut down and try to determine where they're moving to.
Well,
So go ahead, sir.
Maxine, pardon me to take up a few things if I can. First thing is, I find it hard to believe that operation of that magnitude, because it's not a small thing.
Nope.
I mean, I drove past there yesterday, and there are so many containers on that lot that I wonder if they hired a boat just to bring their containers. And I'm being very honest with you.
Probably.
So I would imagine that before they made any move to leave wherever they're coming from, I don't know if they're coming from Brazil or where they were located at the time, wherever they were coming from, I would want to imagine that they would have dotted every I and crossed every T before their stuff left their source. And they should have. I say they should have because we are still awaiting answers.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they would have had to have a significant sum of money to post a bond for that equipment on arrival at the Bridgetown port. The port charges, the handling, the boat, the charges of was the charge to transport a single 40-foot container. Have you seen how many 40-foot containers are sitting on that property?
Yeah, well, you're correct. It's not cheap.
No, and so I am just at a loss because Maxie, I am not trained. I just have a lot of experience. I would have to say. I can't tell you my age because my experience would be a lot less than my age.
I can tell you though. Don't worry, you're in good company.
We keep it a secret, right?
You're in good company. You're in good company. Don't worry.
But I mean, when I introduced BMW to Barbados, BMW gave me a 10-week preparation window. 10 weeks, Marcia. I had to have every single I dotted and T crossed before the date of the launch. Everything, government, licenses, duties, every single thing. Customs permission to bring cars out the bond. We held it at Lloyders Sanford. We had to book the date. A ton of stuff we had to do. And it was a resounding success.
Proper planning.
How can the Barbados government allow an entity into the country without ensuring that every component required for that company or organization or entity to function has been met? Maxine, when I was bringing in for our crusade in 2014, Reverend Benny Hinn, I've discovered for the first time that churches had to get work permits for speakers to speak in the country. I did not know that. But we arranged with the immigration department for the work permit. So when he landed here, his jet, the jet he came in on, we arranged all the preparation for the reception of that jet, the parking of that jet at the airport, and all the rest of it. Every single thing was done. How is it possible? Because I knew what the government required in order for him to come here to speak, and that's just for a couple of days, and that's a crusade.
And that was on a much smaller scale in terms of the numbers. Because if you have a circus, you have performers, you have technicians, you have management people, administrators and everything. So all of these things, and I keep telling people like to talk about the negative, but before that, I have to read this David 1611X. Don't worry, Mr. Circus. Our taxpayers have your backs. In other words, we got to pay. That's the sound. We gonna have to pay.
You got to pay. You got to pay.
It's our taxpayers' money when they make a claim. Because I believe I'm no lawyer, but I believe they can have some legitimate claims to be having their business frustrated, thus causing them some losses. But the point I was making is when I talked about bureaucracy, one of the beautiful things, and I've mentioned this on this program more than once, one of the beautiful things about the public service is that if something has happened before, you can go and find on a file somewhere and in this case on multiple files because you have multiple agencies involved. What had to happen before to allow the circus to function?
But
You
not
know?
only to function, Maxine, to put down their roots in the location. Was not the Barbados Water Authority made aware of that location? Because he is saying that
Exactly.
they had everything confirmed and in place with the exception of health. That is what I heard him say. Incidentally, I missed a lot of what he said because I just experienced a significant issue with my headsets. I really don't know what's happening tonight in the religious circles. We would have to say there's demonic activity, but I don't know if the demonic would be anything to do with the circus that we're looking at. But anyway,
No, but you have touched
you know,
now on because what he's saying is that the one agency that they did not get their permission was health. Now, and this is why I said earlier that if you have develop a practice of bringing officials together, because what happens, you will see this file circulating from one ministry, and so bring everybody together and say, look, we have an application here from this Mexican circus to come and set up in Barbados from X time to Y time. These are the areas which will require approval. Let us all sit down together and work through this, and then we can all sign off. If there are objections, we hear those objections, and if those objections prevail and are made and they're legitimate and necessary in the face of what is happening, then so be it. I mean, this thing sent me to look at the issue of the water 2020 water protection and land use zoning policy, the Barbados Water Authority Water Protection Zones Order 2023. Now, we know that we used to have zone 1, zone 2 areas, etc. One of the things that has happened, and I sent it, I think I sent an article to Dave, I hope he got it, but one of the things that you would realize is that we have a system of zoning the island, recognizing, because a critical thing here is that we get our water that we consume from underground sources. Barbados is largely limestone, highly porous, and therefore our water system can be subject to some kind of contamination, etc. And Dave has correctly put it up. And maybe, as you were mentioning, if he scrolls down, it says, well, let me read this quickly. The Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, in collaboration with the Barbados Water Authority and several critical stakeholders, is pleased to share the green paper on the 2020 Water Protection and Land Use Zoning Policy for public consideration. Now, this was out there and legislation has since been passed. The green paper describes the existing groundwater protection zoning policy, outlines its strengths and shortcomings, and the important thing here is, and proposes a new integrated approach to protection of all the water resources, including coastal waters. It goes on to say that we had a policy that had been created over 50 years ago when there was much less demand for fresh water, the population was not as dense, and the population was concentrated in certain 2 parts of the island, and so on. It also stresses, remember that we are talking about our limestone, which makes contaminants getting into our water system possible. It was also saying that in previous times we weren't using as many harsh hazardous chemicals and so on. And it recognizes that we had a system of zoning which needed, according to this document, revisiting, and that has taken place. So they're suggesting here is that the existing policy is ineffective against persistent chemical pollutants and only focuses on protecting groundwater to the detriment of coastal waters, etc. If you go down further, you will see that they've actually set out, I think in this paper, I believe in this one, the zones, you would see the zones. Okay, right there. It
Yes, right
says
there.
if it's being proposed that the existing zones 1 to 5 be replaced by new zones A to E. So zone A is a strict exclusion zone, smaller in scale than the existing zone 1. So they've reduced the zone 1 with no new developments and restricted agriculture. Zone B is a pathogen management zone with stricter rules for sewage treatment and disposal. Zone C, a chemicals management zone with restrictions on chemicals storage, use and disposal. Now, let me say that Zone 1 would probably have been made up of Zone A, B, and maybe a bit of C. I don't know. But in all of this, people have been asking, where was the circus going to be? But as far as I know and I've heard, that falls in what used to be the Zone 1 area. Now, of course, they said they have reduced Zone 1, but it also tells you that Zone B, because if Zone A is a smaller part of Zone 1, it would face the same kind of restrictions. Zone B is talking about a pathogen management zone with stricter rules for sewage treatment and disposal. Now, we heard about running water, etc. And while we were looking at this Suarez circus, people have been asking about the new geriatric hospital complex, because I think that falls somewhere within what used to be Zone 1 and what now I presume is either Zone A or B, and so on. So it really concerns me that you can have something like the Ministry of Health objecting, or at least certainly not granted. I don't know that they objected, so let me rephrase that. According to Mr. Suarez, the Ministry of Health had not granted permission when he was speaking up to that point in time. But given the kind of areas that we anticipate that the Ministry of Health would be addressing, that to me sounds like a very central, in a peripheral approval. This is a major requirement in terms of approving. That is my take on that. If I am wrong, the Minister of Health or Chief Medical Officer or somebody else can come and show me that I am wrong. But if we are talking about protecting our water from bacteria, from chemicals, etc., the question is, how could an entity go ahead? Now, I have heard from Mr. Suarez. Let me hear from government officials, because he's saying that he had all these permissions. But did they tell him before you start, you have to have every single permission? Or did somebody say to him that he could start conditionally? These are the kinds of answers that we would have to get, because when we look at this, we are talking about securing or protecting something that is fundamentally important and critical to all citizens and people on this island. So I again, I do not understand why this situation has thrown up its head. But you know what? It is not an anomaly. It is apparently the modus operandi of this government.
That I was just about to say that. I was just about to tell you that, Maxine, because it's like people get up in the morning with a brainstorm, no due diligence. Let's do this. Now, as I said, I don't believe, I'm sorry, I do not believe that Mr. Suarez, if that's how his name is pronounced, would have picked up an element of entertainment at the cost that it would have been to him, Maxine.
Yep.
This is not a 5-cent event. That has cost him, I dare say, will put my neck on the block, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because to move a container is about 40, can be anywhere between 20 to 40,000 US dollars. It's not cheap. And I don't know if they're direct shipments out of, if he's coming out of Brazil, I don't know they're direct shipments from Brazil to Barbados. They probably are. I don't know. You might be able to share a bit of light of that on that for me, but I don't know. I know that, for example, If I was shipping something out of the Cayman Islands, I would have to ship either via Jamaica or via Miami. There's no direct shipment from Grand Cayman to Barbados. So I don't know if he had to come through a secondary aspect or whatever he had to do, but it cost him significant sums of
Wherever
money.
he's coming from is
Wherever
going to
he's
cost
coming
it,
from.
because you're talking about significant equipment.
Yes, and then his staff, his entertainment, because I believe probably the entertainers might not necessarily be the same people who are putting up everything and the tents and all of that. Plus, maybe having some local people involved in terms of labor, etc. I would believe that he would have ensured that that everything would have been placed, probably with the exemption of one or two minor things in his mind. I would have thought that if he would have had to have sent some kind of communication to somebody in Barbados, Maxine, to indicate that they wanted to come. And I believe that that entity, whoever it is, should have responded to him and said, okay, yes, you can come, but these are the requirements. And so you would have had to have ensured that each one of the boxes are ticked before you even move your business out of Brazil, or wherever it is he's coming from. But additional to that, I would have thought that on his arrival in Barbados, one of the first things that probably should have been done is to have met, and the local officials could have taken the initiative on this. I mean, Maxine, he may not know how Barbados functions. He don't live here.
But you know, the thing about it, as you were speaking, I listened. Normally, when you have things like this, there is usually either a local partner or a local agent or
a promoter or
representative,
something like that,
a promoter, etc. Because I remember, and I can hear promotions for our previous circus. As I said, the last one I remember was on Spring Garden Highway, where we now have the Barbadian market.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last site that they had used for, that I recall, for a circus in Barbados. I'm not sure if it's the same entity or if it was another one. But I asked the question, who are your facilitators or your business partners or your representatives or advisors or whatever it is you would have secured in Barbados? Who are these people? What did they do on behalf of the company? Did they get things promised? Were they connected? So
there must be, Maxine. I mean, this is embarrassing. I'm going to be very honest with you. This is absolutely embarrassing. And at the end of the day, I don't care which government department or who the head of the department, otherwise, the head of the area of ministry should have been the people who called together. I agree with you 100%. If you're going to have something of this magnitude staged in Barbados, you sit down with all of the parties involved and you establish all that needs to be put in place and all that needs to be done, so that once you start, you can proceed through without any problems. This is it's like the people that are sitting down in government have no idea about planning, organization, or anything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I think, we can only speculate at this point. But as you were speaking, I just did a little search there just now to find out, to see if I could get some information on when last we had the circus. And if that information is correct, this might very well have been here about 10 or 20 years ago.
I remember one being here down where you spoke of.
Spring Garden, yeah.
I believe it's the same one, I believe so. And I'm just checking the chat because, our loyal opposition are always on top of this information. So
that's precisely.
I'm checking the chat.
Somebody sent me, and I will pose a question because I can't assert anything. Does anybody close to government, as close as being a member of parliament and or a member of cabinet, have anything to do with this circus outside of their official? In other words, let me be very clear. And I asked the question, does anybody associated with this government, either as a member of parliament, a member of cabinet, both, or any such thing, or anybody connected to any of them? Do they have anything to do? Is there anybody there with anything to do with this commercial the commercial aspect of this operation?
You know,
I asked the question, all I can say to the person, I make no assertions. I asked the question based on what you essentially were trying to get me to ask, or you know. So I put it out there for whatever it's worth. Yes, sir.
Laurie Bob is saying here, the people that own the circus should have come to Barbados months before and checked out the place it is to set up. But if it was here before, then I believe they would be, not that I'm making excuses for them, I believe they would have engaged whatever process they engaged back then, they would have engaged now and maybe advise as to any changes or adjustments or amendments or whatever. But it still begs the question, though, Maxine. I'm sorry, but somebody up the line of government has to take responsibility for this mess.
Well, I would say this because, and I say to the Prime Minister, what responsibility do you assume? Because I'm sure there was a significant role for town planning in this. You know, she's no longer Minister of Finance, but I just find it crazy. Laurie Bob is saying that they should come and do a recce, come and do an investigation. But if I come and I say I am coming to physically look at the lay of the land, that's one thing. I come and I see the botanical gardens, and it's a much larger expanse of land than was Spring Garden Highway, where the last circus was located. I don't know if the scale is bigger or whatever the case may be, but that is where they were last time. And but the question then is, beyond seeing the lay of the land, I presume, as I said, that they have agents, they had persons who came to liaise with some person or persons, and certainly to engage various agencies. So you might have come and you might have been told all permissions will be granted. So come on down. Or we have permissions in place. So that is why I need to hear now. We've heard the circus spokesperson speak to this. Let us hear from government, one, and two, if there is a commercial partner or advisor on the operations and the facilitation of all that has to happen to get the show on the road. Let us hear from them. But as it is embarrassing, particularly at the time when I hear a minister telling people Barbados is a good place to do business. Now, I think that is subject to serious scrutiny as well. And I might sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I apologize for crossing you, Maxine. I want to bring Apostle. He's been there in the wings waiting for quite a bit. And I want to bring him in. We want to touch on, let me see if I can get this done.
Apostle, he is testing your patience. Or should I say we are testing your patience?
Yeah, I would have to say we.
And notice I corrected. I included myself.
Myself. Apostle, welcome to the show tonight. Maxine, as I said, I do apologize for crossing you. Please, I hope you can remember the thought that you were sharing at the time, Maxine, to go back to that. But Apostle, I know we are looking, we're looking to engage, I think, vaccines and Fauci and whatnot, but I feel that this is something that we need to complete, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes before 9 o'clock.
Listen, I'm good. You know? I'm good. Yeah, this all right, Rev. I'll be listening to the show. And first of all, good night to both of you. Rev, good to see you. Madam McLean, always great to be on the show with you, Rev. Yes. It's good to see you tonight. I think you've been trying to pull a clown out of, sorry, you've been trying to pull a clown out of the hat, or maybe a rabbit out of the hat, but it's been phenomenal what I've been listening to so far. And, this is a major problem in Barbados. This is a huge, it's a huge embarrassment. I can tell you that.
Yes, yes. And you see, the thing is that, as you mentioned, Maxine, the problem comes from the fact that this seems to be the modus operandi of this administration.
Yeah.
If this was something that happened, one could say, okay, but when you look at the entire operations of this administration, it's like every time they take one step forward, they go 3, 4, 5 steps backward. And it's like they're consistently engaging. I must say this. I turned on to my Facebook page and I saw an individual, I wouldn't call her name, but as far as I'm concerned, looks don't make you a qualified candidate for parliament. That is as much as I would say about that. And I thought to myself, but there's a Johnny come lately. How are you going to put a Johnny come lately to engage matters of domestic terrorism who has no experience, no knowledge, no nothing to do? And that was on the matter of domestic terrorism. And it just seems that we have a lot of square pegs in round holes when it comes to the operation of this administration. I'm sorry to put it that way. I apologize to any of them who might be listening on the show who may take an offense to it, but that is how the function has appeared. You're dealing consistently with square pegs in round holes. Go ahead, Apostle. Apostle, you said something just now?
Are you frozen? It looks like.
Yeah, it looks like he might have to go out.
Rev, I wanted to say.
You were frozen just now, so you might have to repeat what you said.
Okay. I just wanted to say that you and I, we know both that one of the things that the Bible tells us that if the rulers of the world had wisdom, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. This explains a very clear principle that if they had wisdom, they would have just left Jesus alone. But they didn't have it.
That they don't have wisdom.
They don't. It's plain. Who brings a circus to Barbados without due diligence? We've had a circus here before, as Madam McLean said, and there was issues, but not this kind of issue where the key persons who may have been responsible for them coming here, and then the key governmental persons, nobody is saying anything. Okay. So you can see clearly that whoever gave them permission to be there in the Bell, or let me say, no, they're calling it the Botanical Gardens at the Bell. Okay, whoever is responsible for granting them permission to be there obviously did not do their homework. So
that's right.
Issue is not the Mr. Suarez. He's not the problem. He's coming to your country. You're bringing him to your country to entertain your people. And if that is the reality, then it is up to you to make sure that is the whole aspect of it is in a position where it can work. Now, they're looking for other venues, but right over here in St. Peter at Hayman's, they have so much available land for an event like that. So much land. As a matter of fact, they use Hayman's for crop over. So why are you making it look as though you don't have venues to do stuff like this when you do? So it goes to show, Rev, these folk, as Mr. Stewart says, they put the shoes on and then want to put the socks on afterwards. And that's basically what we're seeing. These people have really no wisdom. And this is a sign that, of course, let me just say this. I've said it before. I got some stick for it. But when you're dealing with a demonic structure, a demonic structure cannot operate in a high level of wisdom for a prolonged period of time. And what we are seeing right now are the major cracks in the foundation of this administration. Not little cracks, major cracks. Because right now, if the media in Barbados cannot approach the key persons at the circus, they can't approach the key persons at Town and Country Planning, the key persons at the Bell Plantation, the key persons within the government, the key financial partners of this. If our media cannot do any investigative journalism to come to a reality where they can then say to the people of Barbados, but this is what we found out, and these are the persons who are responsible for this event. As Madam McLean said, when that circus came here to Barbados, that was on the Spring Garden, all of the persons in terms of the advertising on radio, the flyers that they had, the fact that advertising was in the schools, and right around the island. And then you have an event like this. You have a circus that comes to Barbados, and it's under this shroud of secrecy. It's almost like, okay, well, it's like you brought something else into the island, use them to bring something into the island. And now that we've gotten what we wanted, we're just going to discard them. This is going to turn into a very, very serious situation. And as someone said before, they don't know why they're bringing more clones to Barbados, because we're full of clones right now. So I think.
Oh, dear me. Apostle.
Yes, sir. I said.
He didn't say where they were.
No, he didn't. He didn't say where they were coming from.
I told, yeah, exactly. I told my congregation a while back. I said I would never go to a circus where all the acts are clowns. And I'll turn it over to you now, Red.
Well, listen, Dave has this image up on the screen, and Dave is a real provoker. That's all I would have to say. He's trying to provoke us into conversation with this clown car. But listen, folk, there's something I wanted to move on to in a couple of minutes. Not that I mean, we can't exhaust this subject, but being the time of the year, and I'm glad that both of you are here. I'm a little behind schedule on this, but we have to deal with things as they come. This we wait to hear, as Maxine has indicated. We've heard from Mr. Suarez. Let's see if we can hear from the government, however that comes, and let's hear what they say. And there are always three sides to every story, I'm told. There is one side, the other side, and then there's the truth that you have to get. And maybe as we listen, we can determine where that truth is. All right. So, but listen, it's the time of the year, Maxine, Apostle, when, as you know, parents are preparing their children for school. And one of the things I want to chat with about for the next maybe 30 minutes before we close is the high cost of education in Barbados. Sometimes people think of education only in terms of the school. If you understand what I'm saying, just the cost of the school fees and so on. But I'm thinking about books, uniforms, supplies, transportation, technology. All of these factors that go into what it's going to cost for a parent to get their children back to school. I mean, we're seeing it even within our own family, the tremendous financial pressure. And given the exceptional high costs of living in Barbados, how can we can't really say that education is free, because how free is education when families are struggling to afford everything surrounding it? And so I'd like us to, if we can, engage this for a few minutes, speak to how can ordinary families manage the aspect of education in Barbados today. And in that you were the last one on the show there, just no Apostle, I'll just let you kick off and let you follow up. You take the opening bat, but only 6 balls, huh? I am not going to bowl in my ball. And then we have You have to go over to your next batter on the other side of the wicket.
Yeah, I'll just poke a quick single and then let her come in on the striker's end.
Dear me.
One of the things that I've been looking at this, and I had about a 3-hour conversation with my cousin years ago before he transitioned, Dr. Waldo Ramsey. He and I were very close, and so I had many times to go to his office and we would chat. And he shared some things with me that I was very profound. One of the things that he said to me that I grabbed a hold of, he said in his interaction with Errol Barrow, he made a statement to me, and I'm quoting him. He said that Errol Barrow shared with him that it wasn't free education that he wanted. It was freedom through education that he wanted. Not free education, freedom for the people to go after their freedom by becoming educated. And I'm asking myself the question right now, is the current educational structure in Barbados, is it moving our children towards freedom? Or is it being designed to move them back into enslavement? So is there a hidden agenda behind the current educational system to make things so hard for parents to get their kids back to school so that they can carry out this particular hidden agenda? There's some questions I'm asking. The other aspect is, are we educating our children to live quality, wholesome lives? Or are we educating them according to the agenda of the UN, according to the agenda of the IDB and all of these elements that the World Economic Forum? Is the educational system being doctored, being altered, so that our children in Barbados become a part of this global agenda? And I'll be looking at these things because, many times I've seen some of the parents that would send me the book list for kids that are, even going to nursery. All of the children to bring a ream of paper and all of these things that, books that parents said, we purchased these books, and in the whole term, these books were never used. So I'm wondering what exactly is the whole issue of making the cost of education. We're talking, nursery, primary, secondary schools, then the element of clothing, all of these things is becoming too hard for parents in Barbados, especially those on the lower financial scales, to properly prepare their kids for going back to school. Now, one of the things that we do at WHMI is that we make sure that our parents are fully financially supplied so that they can take care of whatever they need to do to get their kids back to school. And that's something that we have been doing consistently on a yearly basis. But what I am seeing, Rev, is that there's been such a shift in the quality of education and the standard of education that we had growing up and what we had at school. Okay, that has been completely eroded right now within our educational system. We saw that with the IDB test, and then we saw that with the situation at the Spring Memorial School. So there's obviously some other structure that is in place that we need to find out where the Ministry of Education is getting their instructions from. Because the reality of making sure that our children are prepared for life. And this is one of the things, before I stop, that was very, very impressive to me. And this goes back to what Dr. Waldo said. When I first went to Tortola, the superintendent of prisons in Tortola, when I first went there, was a Barbadian. And this goes back, as I said, to what Dr. Waldo said, that Arabara wanted his people educated so much that they could fill any position anywhere in the world. Okay? So now that the other Caribbean islands have caught up with us, now we are seeing they are coming to Barbados to fill positions, because somewhere along the line, we lost the root of what our educational system should have been, not just to our children, but also to our people. People talk about the Singapore model and all of that stuff, but to implement a model like that, you need a leader with a very strong dimension of wisdom, to have a vision. And one of the things that this administration has not presented to Barbadians or to this country in the last 8 years, they have not presented a vision.
Yeah.
And of course, where there's no vision,
the people.
Are going to
what
perish.
happens with the people.
So, that's my input here tonight, Rev.
I raised the matter of wisdom a couple of shows back, when I spoke to the matter of any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. And Proverbs speaks of wisdom being one of the most valuable pursuits in a person's lifetime. And so I think Maxine would agree with us in terms of wisdom. Wisdom is the capacity to know how to properly execute the knowledge and experience that you have had to such a degree that you can benefit from it, regardless of whether it's personally, household, community, nationally, or whatever. And one of the things that I observe in listening to a lot of the international platforms is that obviously the move is toward AI and the replacement of a significant component of labor by AI. It is estimated that 90% of the jobs globally will be lost within the next couple of years as a result of AI. And so I would ask the question, what is the educational system of Barbados doing to prepare our young people for that type of an environment where, and it's going to get here sooner or later, it will arrive here in Barbados. What are we doing to prepare our young people to transition into a highly technological working environment where you could be the only person sitting in an office and the rest of things around you could very well be, and I'm not being ludicrous, robots. I saw, I can't remember, the Prince of Saudi Arabia or whatever come off of his aircraft on a video that one of the news medias were doing, and his security guard was a robot. Yes,
that's an AI generated thing. I know that huge.
You saw the guy. That was the AI generated.
That wasn't real.
That wasn't real.
That was AI generated. I always like to search the source of these
things. Thank you for correcting me with that and informing me of that, because I will tell you this: I would not. It was
scary looking.
I am telling you, I would not want to approach. I wouldn't even want to approach him, to greet him and to honor him or anything. But no, quite seriously, our and Maxine, I'd like you to take this up, because this is an area that you're involved in terms of training and so on. The cost, of course, is a critical matter, but Apostle raised an aspect that Dr. Waldo Ramsey spoke of, that the Right Honorable Errol Walton Barrow indicated to him about what he really wanted was education for freedom. And it is something that in our peace ambassadors environment, we talk about alleviating poverty through education. So it would be great, Maxine, to hear your thoughts on this.
I want to start, thanks. And I want to start where Apostle, and that's a critical point you made. And I was trying to jot down a note as you were speaking. not free education, but freedom. I wrote it, freedom arising from being educated. That's how I look at it. Because yes, it's important that we be able to access, and therefore there is traditionally not direct costs to parents and so on in our nursery, primary, etc. My concern, there are a couple of things. One, what are we really educating, and how are we educating our people, our children? Because that's where it starts. And
good question.
in answering that, you look at the whole issue. What is it costing us to do so? Because I started school, and I am sure both of you are probably certainly know in the case of Pastor Ferdinand, we're about the same ballpark age-wise. I started school at 5. Nowadays, our children start school at 3.5, maybe in the public system, the nursery system. So in essence, they have a 1.5 years more education than us in theory. But I'm looking, I engage young people and so on, and I am not getting a sense that I'm trying to find the right, that the children of recent times have been able to grasp certain fundamentals in a way that will help them to better receive education as they move up the system, whether it is from nursery to primary to secondary to tertiary, whatever the nature of tertiary. I also am aware that young people or people today have access to, I can type in a question, for example, do you think that Barbadian students are getting, or that the country is getting value for money spent on education? And before I can count 10, I'm going to get a long spiel coming out and answer. You talk about AI, that's part of it. But my concern is that in being able to do that, we are perhaps as a people, and when I say I'm not talking about Barbadians alone, we as a people are perhaps losing out on our failure to develop a level of thinking and analysis that should help us to whether it's in terms of living, because education is not just technical. It is also about preparing people for life. There's a teacher, and it would be wonderful if I could hear her on one of these programs. She taught my son when he was doing that 25 years ago, almost, when he was prepared for the common entrance. And she left the school system, you put in 33 and a third or whatever, but she has now created an institution of learning, private institution. And one of the things she said to me some years ago is, I educate my students for life. Right? There's and it's interesting that every year, and I mean, this might sound like I'm digressing, but we're talking cost and value.
No, but I'm a big girl is asking the same question, Maxine. Look, what is there that is taught in school that prepares us for life?
Every year we have had in the last, I can tell maybe the last 5 or so years or so, we would have heard, there's a little routine I go through every time the common entrance results come out. I contact this lady and I ask her, of the top 10 students, how many were yours? Now, remember, she is now running a private institution. And the interesting, because I asked her that against a background where people were saying the private schools are doing better. But you know what it is? A lot of the parents who pay to send their children to private schools turn around and pay and send their children to her as well. And so you would see that when she was at St. Stephen's, her students performed very well. I mean, I can look around Barbados now at young people in their 30s and so on, and point to students who would have sat in her classes. And so my whole question is, what is it that we're doing? I mean, and I don't want to hear the buzzwords. I remember the current minister of education, but I think that was the title, education. That's it. This is um, the new minister. Minister Blackman. I think that's
Blackman.
Yes, he sought to challenge me when I raised certain questions in one of his first appearances on a call-in program, when he was talking about creating global citizens. And I said to him, and I said to the people on that program, I am not, basically, this is a synopsis of what I'm not interested in the buzzwords. That sounds pretty, but what does it mean? You know, before we can get to talk about global citizens, I want to make sure that our young people are able to read, that they're literate, that they are numerate, that they are able to reason. Because, and I raise those because when you hear discussion of performance, and I'm not talking about top 10 students, so I'm talking about the general performance in what are considered the critical components of that common entrance, for example, in terms of reasoning and whatever. There are certain areas that our students are falling down all the time. Now, and that's important. I'm going to look for the article. David is saying AI is changing the way we think. It is reprogramming our minds. I came across an article the other day which spoke to how our brains are stimulated when we go in search of information in some of the traditional ways. And when we do this, I mean, if I can ask a question, I mean, and I did it just now, just before coming on this program, when I wanted to understand the new zoning arrangements. In fact, I printed it out, and I have AI overview because I posed a question. And
I did as well.
And before I can count to 5,
it had the answer.
It had the answer.
Yeah.
And so in essence, you almost don't have to think.
Correct.
Think about it. I mean,
correct.
Think about it. You almost don't have to think. And unless you realize that it may not give you 100% accurate information, but generally you probably don't. You hardly have to think because it is. But the key thing, and I remember introducing some young people to a mentor, a Caribbean person retiring in Barbados, who worked in this area. In fact, the person would tell you that this is somebody who, having lived outside the region for 50 years, decided to retire to Barbados. Would have been doing research on AI as a graduate student decades ago. But his contention is we need to develop people who can develop these systems, who don't only just function as customers. Because, you know, as I said, I can put in a question and come up with some very smart sounding answers.
Yes.
But there are two things. One, do I understand what I'm getting back? And do I question any of what I get back? And secondly, am I in a position to design those systems?
Yes.
As one of the options. So,
but Maxine,
my last comment is I am not sure that we are getting sufficient bang for the buck. We're not getting our money's worth out of our systems, and it goes over and above AI and those changing things. I am convinced that a lot of our young people are leaving school without being equipped with what I call the basics, which would allow them to build the more sophisticated elements of being educated. And that to me is a problem.
Well, let me ask you this, Maxine, because, you know, recently I was trying to remember as you were speaking which country it was in the EU. I can't remember if it's Denmark
or Sweden or Norway, Sweden. One of those three countries.
Of those countries removed technology from their classroom and replaced it with books, you know, with what I will call the traditional process of education, because of the fact that they saw exactly what you are talking about. They saw the inability, number one, to read and understand, the inability to process and write. In other words, you read, you understand, and then that would have been comprehension when we read something and then we had to comment on it, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, the ability to rationalize and reason. Sweden, thank you very much.
Led the government among European countries to reverse classroom digitization.
Yes, and because I agree with what you're saying, because we see it because our young people are so technologically involved, that there is no need, and it's a dangerous thing. You were talking about, and I did it recently too, Maxine. Not that I set out to do it, but I saw some interesting videos by doctors of all the people showing how the brain functions in terms of, yes, there it is in Netherlands, implemented
That's in
nationwide.
Netherlands, but Sweden, they were saying Sweden led the way, so it's including Denmark, Finland, France, Italy.
Yes,
and there's some reasons, but you finish the point. I'll come back to that if you have a chance.
Oh goodness, what was it I was saying? I slipped.
Doctors, you were saying that something.
Oh yeah, these doctors were showing how even, like, when you get up in the morning, the first thing a person does is pick up their phone. They were showing the psychological and neurological challenges and issues of the brain when you follow a particular process. And as a matter of fact, one doctor was saying the first thing you should do when you get up in the morning is to pay attention to you. Not to WhatsApp, not to anything of that nature. Pay attention to you. Meditate, sit, think. Devotions. The apostle, we would fall into that category. These are the things that say you need to do this first, because what they're showing is that as a result of it, the brains of a particular young people are being rewired, comprehensively rewired, and as a result of that, simple things that they encounter in life, they are unable to engage. They cannot resolve it, because this is how the rewiring process is going on. Go ahead, Apostle.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I showed, and I've got Madam Maxine brought this up, but I showed a video to my congregation on YouTube, and it shows what happens to the neuron when a person learns something new.
Yes.
Okay, I showed that video to my congregation Sunday morning during ministry, because I wanted them to see how the brain expands and how it works. And when you learn something new, how the neurons, they're activated, they get fired up, they light up, they start putting out tentacles, looking to connect with other neurons that may have picked up the same information, and looking to create a giant network. Now, one of my favorite movies is Lucy, starring Scarlett Johansson, and a very interesting movie to watch. But let me say this in terms of education. I usually spend time with all of our students that are going into the common entrance exam. I usually spend time with them. And Rev, the years I've been doing this, do you know that in the common entrance exam, there are geometrical questions? And the children, I always ask the parents to make sure they have a geometry set. None of the kids in class 4 were capable of using their geometry set. So even at the stage of class 4, I was using, at All Saints Boys Schools, I was using my geometry set in class 2. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how in Barbados in class 4, a child does not know how to use a geometry set when there are geometrical questions in the examination. So we're looking at teaching concepts versus just giving information. Reading skills, comprehension, composition, writing skills, reasoning skills, mental cognition. You're looking at questioning skills, okay? So that you see something and your ability to formulate the right question in order to get information. And you even learn it from Sesame Street. Sesame Street taught you that the way to get answers is to ask questions. So why is it that we are supposedly training our children for life and the key things that they need to do? Okay, I asked them, okay, what are the 4 elements of story writing? They don't know, yet you want them to do a composition in the exam. I said, many of these kids on many levels, this exam should now at least have gotten to the place that if a child does not want to do a composition, at least let them do some type of artistic work and let that be an element to the common entrance exam instead of it just being maths and comprehension composition. Let them be creative, to draw something and give them that opportunity. But I can tell you, Rev, that on certain levels, this is where the private schools are beating the government secondary schools, because the private schools are not on the same structure as what the Ministry of Education is demanding that the schools do. So this is part of why we have to make sure that going forward, the structure of education in Barbados is not as tainted and it's not as watered down as what we're seeing today. Because I took those kids and I made sure that they knew what the compass was, the protractor was. I showed them how to make sure they put the pencil in, line it up properly, learn how to draw whole circles with it, understand diameters, understanding radius, understand basic things that I realized these kids are moving towards a common entrance exam, and the basics on many levels just aren't there. So you can see where it is basically tailored to those who have the faster comprehension skills. And this is where I believe the structure in Barbados should be developed. I spoke years ago. I said by now we should have an institution in between the primary schools and the secondary schools, because if you find that a child is advanced, I have one of my members, her grandson at 8 years old, he scores hundreds all the time. And it's like one day he was in the class sitting, and the teacher, she said, was very upset with him because he was just looking out of the window, and when she checked, he had finished his work. And he got bored quick because he's still in a system with other children who are much slower than he is. So I suggested, why not build an institution for advanced children so that we don't keep them and make sure they get to class 4. Let's see if we can advance these kids early and let them go on in life instead of holding them back. So a lot of things has to be done to make sure that our children are getting the kind of education that is necessary, especially if we're looking to develop Barbados. And Barbados has a future that is very, very bright, even though we have this current situation. But we must make sure that we are not just preparing our children to be maids and gardeners and maintenance men and bartenders and waitresses. We are preparing our people to serve the people who are wealthy. We are preparing our people to do well in Barbados, live well in Barbados, and if the opportunity arises for them to go out of Barbados and be, expansive and know life and experience life in other nations from being educated in Barbados, then so be it. But we've got to stop this go slow, everyday, baby kind of educational system that I'm seeing in Barbados. I sat on the board at St. Lucie Secondary School for 6 years on the board of management. I saw a lot, and Rev, I can tell you, the time to revisit what we are doing in Barbados, find out what the problem is, find out if there's an agenda that the Ministry of Education is following that is not going to ever bring wholesome education to our children, and find out what is going on, that the cost of education is so heavy on the pockets of our people.
Well, again, Maxine, the thought is running through my mind as I listen to both of you speak. Um, who trains the educators? One of the challenges I see in Barbados, and I stand to be corrected, I'm not an expert, but I try to observe things both nationally, regionally, internationally, is that a lot of our systems are outdated in the sense that our training of the people who have to educate and who have to train is not keeping up with the rest of the world. If you see what I'm saying, like doctors have to keep abreast of what's happening in the medical profession on an ongoing basis and be trained and be retrained and be retrained and be retrained, because treating cancer today is not the same thing as treating cancer 2 years ago. Treating, for that matter, the pandemic that we've had, it's not the same. And if you don't, and this is one of the reasons, we won't get to it tonight. I doubt we will, Apostle, in terms of the vaccines and whatnot. This is why we raise questions as it relates to the medical profession. I raise it across the board. Not doctors, lawyers. Lawyers have to be consistently updated and upgraded. Mechanics have to be consistently retrained and upgraded because of the changing environment that we're living in.
Yeah.
And my question really lies within the context of what kind of programs are they to assist our educators? I'm talking about the ones who have to deal with the children on the ground. I'm not talking about even the people in the Ministry of Education need to be upgraded and updated, because unless they are, they will continue to perpetuate systems that will not necessarily address what our children are going through. And I just wonder if that does not happen here in Barbados.
I can't say categorically yes or no. What I can tell you is that I can agree with you that you want to have systems in place to monitor, to facilitate. This is monitor at the level of policy and administration. And so that's at the institutional level. And then to have mechanisms which facilitate individual teacher improvement. I mean, you mentioned doctors, lawyers, I would say accountants.
Yes.
Professional accountants, nurses. I remember legislation being passed while I was in a member of cabinet to require that kind of professional continuous education for medical practitioners and so on. And I believe that something would have been done in relation to nurses. Now, I if I use myself as an example, you talk about dating yourself, but I don't mind dating myself. My first class, or my first entry into the classroom at UE was as a lecturer was on the 15th of January 1982. And I left there as a full-time lecturer in 1999. Since I've left there, the university has put a number of structures in place to ensure that people who came into teaching, because remember, back in when I went to university as a student and as a young lecturer, my recollection was there was no formal structure to prepare a lecturer to teach. You came with postgraduate qualifications, and the assumption was that you would understand how to teach. And then, then they said, no, there's a need to help people to understand things like teaching methodologies and all of these things. So my concern is we talk about these things in the school system. And my question is, and I could only ask the question, what exactly is being done to assist teachers in understanding the importance of utilizing different teaching methodologies? I mean, I looked, for example, at we were talking, you raised Pastor Ferdinand, and then Apostle and myself joining in the discussion of what was happening in other jurisdictions in Europe, for example, where they have decided to step back from having heavy reliance on computers and screens and so on. And they give you a reason for this. They said if reasons for the shift away from those reinvesting in what they call analog learning materials instead of
digital
computers and so on, digital. They said the reasons are falling literacy, lower reading comprehension, and declining core academic scores. Cognitive research, which we've been kind of talking about,
yes.
the results. Evidence that paper and handwriting improve memory,
Yes,
focus,
that's a fact.
comprehension better than screens. And then attention spans, concerns over students' concentration and screen fatigue. Nowadays, you keep people saying, oh, don't write it too long. People don't read beyond X amount of seconds or whatever the case may be. I said people need to learn to concentrate. Everything cannot be condensed into a few buzzwords. And that is part of what's happening, even in terms of this country. Education policymakers have resorted to what I call synopses of things. For example, I recently heard a parent on one of the radio stations talking about a petition to delay the implementation of whatever is to replace the common entrance or whatever. And I said to myself, up to now, I cannot explain to either you gentlemen or anybody else for that matter, exactly what the government, the Ministry of Education is proposing in terms of a replacement. A general description of it, details of how it is going to work, and things like that. But yet they are saying we want to fundamentally transform the system. But if you ask any of the ministers, whether it's the ministers in the Ministry of Education or their cabinet colleagues, who should also understand, because these things are supposed to be taken through cabinet, tell us exactly what these changes will be. How are they going to be made operational and all of these? No, we hear some nice sounding, I use the word buzzwords, but sounding phrases and some pretty charts and so on. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, Jane teacher, John teacher, how are they going to go in the classroom and make this happen? Nobody can tell me. And so if the educational system is failing at that level to understand, then you can see how that will translate into a number of shortcomings putting this thing in place.
You see, I'm a big girl says teachers have workshops during the long holidays.
Doing what exactly?
Yeah, but not only that, at what level and who is training them? I'm sorry, and it's not meant to reflect on anybody in Barbados, because I think we have some very capable people in Barbados.
We do.
We have some very capable people. But the reality is that there are elements in the global environment, let me put it that way, that they are oblivious of. When I talk with some people, they go like, where's that happening? And I'm saying, well, it happens, in the United States, or it happens in Canada, or this is being taught, as we just saw there, in the Netherlands, and to me, Apostle, I think you would understand this, not that Maxine wouldn't. You would understand this from a spiritual standpoint. I don't listen to anybody who can't take me higher than where I am. I really don't. I don't listen to anybody. When I say that, it's not that I don't listen to my little grandchild, because they can teach you quite a few things. But I want somebody who's above my level to carry me up to where they are. If I am on par with you, I can only lift you to where I am, if you understand what I'm saying. And I am just wondering, what is our educational system providing for our teachers to carry them beyond where we are in the country? And very often that source is not located in Barbados. That source may be in the European Union. It may be in the US. For that matter, maybe in South America. I don't know. Okay. And yes, it's no problem to have workshops during long holiday, but what are you doing in the workshops? What training are you getting? What exposure are you receiving? Who are the experts with whom you're dealing with? I think I mentioned the last time we were together, Apostle, Dr. McCullough is arriving here next month. And to me, it would do our medical professionals to get into as much discussion with him as possible, because he's streets ahead of our medical people in this country. Streets ahead of it. This is a man that is formulating new methods of dealing with cancers that are successfully working. And so you want to engage people who are beyond where you are if you want to improve who you are and who you have responsibility for.
That's it. That's it.
So I mean, it's not enough to me to train. Who's training?
Yeah.
What are they training? You know.
Good point. Good points. Good points. Good points, Rev. I think you hit there on, you know, what is in my mind most of the times. And of course, you and I as ministers, we understand that if you want to go further in ministry, you have to connect with persons who have been where you are going. And I think it's very critical, especially now that we're talking about education. What are the procedures to lift our teachers into a higher realm? You know, several years ago, I watched the movie Avengers, and there's a scene where they're talking about all of the Avengers are on the ship, and they're talking about the Tesseract. And Thor came, and Thor said to them, "Your experiments with the Tesseract was a signal to the higher realms that you are ready for a higher form of war." And the guys looked around like, a higher form? Yeah, I tell you, this is warfare on another level. So what's happening with our teachers to get them ready for education on another level? And this is very, very critical, because if the world is changing, things are changing, the economics are changing, the needs are changing. Why is it that our level of presentation to our people is still archaic? Why is it still outdated and antiquated? Why are we still there when you're saying that we need to advance? We need a higher form, a better form of education, but that will still give our people the type of readiness that is necessary to live life on another level. So
correct.
Again, I go back to what my cousin told me, Dr. Waldo, you know, the Right Honorable Walter Barrow said, "I want freedom through education, not free education." And I think that is one of the main elements that we need to change, because the idea of free education has been planted into the minds of our people. And that has been, to me, one of the levels that has kept our people on a certain plateau where we believe that, yeah, we're going to get free education. And now governments cannot sustain that free education. So let's go back. This is why the poverty is there, because the people are on this free education, this free bus ride. When we were going to school, the bus ticket was $7.50 a week. We're living in a better time, and we're still expecting to fool people with this free transportation for school children, this free everything, No, it keeps the public, it keeps those people in a status of poverty,
of dependency as well.
Okay,
keeps them in a state of dependency.
Yeah, I've told my people, do not. You are in the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God has different laws, different rules. You live by the kingdom. You do not depend on a government. You live by the laws of the kingdom. do not ever be found depending on a government. Okay, so the reality is, why are we seeing all of this poverty? Because it was a mindset that was used. Free education, free education, free bus ride, free school meals, free, and we've come to the point where that can no longer be sustained.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Sorry, Maxine. I mean, this is. I sold cars. Okay, I worked for several years, 1997 to 2001. I think I was with the S&T Motors. I handled BMW. Every year, I had to go to Munich for training. Every single year.
there you go.
Every year, Maxine. Every year, technology in BMW changed 3 to 4 times per year. So that I was required to go every year. I was trying to make Barbados a training hub for the Caribbean, but it didn't work out. Nevertheless, I had to go every year, and I was in sales. This is not engineering. This is not mechanics. This, where you would expect the engineers and the mechanics and so on to require training. This was sales and marketing every single year, to upgrade and update my knowledge, my capacity to present, my understanding. Because every time you look at a feature, people talked about features. We didn't. We talked about benefits, because a feature is not worth anything unless it's a benefit to you. So those benefits consistently change. I had to go for training every year. Well, that's a car salesman. I was a glorified account executive. That's what they called me, account executive, glorified car salesman. But if I had to do that to sell a car, aren't our children more important than a car? Where our teachers, from the head down, I'm talking from the Minister of Education back down. If the Minister of Education thinks he is so great that he don't need to be trained, he should resign from the job and leave. Because it doesn't matter how, and Senator Maxine, what I'm saying is absolutely correct, because you've been Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think, if my mind serves me correctly. And I know you would have had to consistently update your information and knowledge regarding countries, regarding agreements, all kinds of things that you would have had to have engaged yourself personally. I don't just mean governmentally. You had to know what you were talking about when you left this country, or even in this country, on the basis of what is happening around the world. You would have had to update yourself on an ongoing basis. So from the minister all the way back down in the education system should be seeking all the possible means to update themselves so that they can bring to our country a better educational system.
I think, and I'm trying to fuse all that we've been trying to pull together. I think to me, as an educator, and I call myself an accidental educator because I went to KFL to teach for one term, and just to fill in for somebody who had come here on an exchange program. I had to leave, and they needed somebody. They left halfway in the year, and they needed somebody to fill in. And then I ended up spending an additional 17 years. But one of the things, so I call it accidental. I mean, and the politics, that there's an accidental element to that too, because I was asked by late Prime Minister if I was interested in running, and I said no, I had no interest in that, but I would have assisted in the capacities that I could. But that's a story for another time. But the key thing for me was that I need, as you pointed out, I need to understand understand the bigger picture. So in terms of education, let's say in our primary schools, or our infants, our children, what I think the fundamental question is, what is it that we are seeking to achieve through whatever mix of courses, classes that we give these children? What is it that we are trying to do? And that understanding has to be clear at the level of the government. Let's put it that way, because they're the ultimate policy makers. And it then translates into an understanding on the part of a minister. You do not walk into a ministry understanding issues.
Right.
Even if you were a teacher, you are going into that ministry. I mean, I will use the example, and this is where you say to people, not because he was one of my colleagues, but because he understood. Minister Ronald Jones, as Minister of Education, he was a primary school teacher. He was a trade unionist in a teachers union. He became a policymaker. So in essence, he found himself being able to understand issues from multiple elements of the system, the education system. So when he went into that, he went in with certain knowledge, but that did not make him all knowing. It allowed him to see the big picture. Some people are big picture thinkers and some are not. And you have to force yourself to understand. But the point I'm making is that you have to start at the top of this big picture where people understand. And in the case of our education system, that is outside, that is at the level of the cabinet. But the cabinet has to be informed by the technocrats and so on in the ministry. So there has to be an ongoing engagement and understanding, not an all-knowing attitude or whatever the case may be. And that also has to be transmitted or cascade down or across, however you want to look at it, to the administrators in the school, the teachers, the parents, etc. A child going to school is not about learning arithmetic and English and so on. These are not disparate things. These are things which are part of a system that is intended to shape a certain kind of thinking. And I think Apostle was trying to touched on those things earlier. For example, your reference to the ability to understand what those tools inside a geometry set are for. What does that allow you to understand? Part of the challenge, I think, is that a lot of our children, and people say we did it, I'm not so sure. For me, if I don't understand a concept, I can't just regurgitate it. If I don't understand it, I'm not going to be able to do it and maintain that knowledge. And I think we have to ask ourselves, to what extent are we in our education system sacrificing those fundamental understandings and objectives for a lot of fancy packaging of things that taken together are not properly explained, understood, or executed. And so students go to school and they're learning all of these things that a lot, quote unquote, a lot more than we did at their age, but they're understanding less. And I don't know what you think, Apostle, but I think, because you're saying you engage school children in,
I do.
Because it is something that I've been trying to grapple with when I listen to youngsters, when I engage some of them, and even engage parents trying to understand, what's this school thing about for you or for that child? What are we doing? What are we transferring and creating when we send our children to school? What do they come away with? And this takes us back to the question you were asking, Pastor Ferdinand, about the cost. Are we spending our money efficiently and effectively, or are we just spending money?
Well, I tell you, I'm here rolling along with you guys, and because it's a very critical subject to my mind. I take it very personally because, as you both know, my mother was an educator. And I benefited a lot in life of values, because I didn't just learn my arithmetic and my comprehension and my composition in English and that. I learned a lot of life values. I spent a lot of time in the domestic classroom. I know you would, Maxine, I don't know if Apostle would know what I'm talking about, but, in domestic classroom, we learned a lot of things there. We learned how to do gardening. We learned how to plant. I don't know how many of you remember putting the seed and the blotting paper in the glass, putting the seed between
Yes,
the glass
sir.
and the blotting paper and the
That's
water in
right.
the bottom, and
That's
learn
correct.
how plants grow and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I grew up with all of that. And I must say that I probably need to spend more time with some of my grandchildren and whatnot and those kind of things. You know, we take for granted that a lot of this is being done in schools and so forth, only to discover in truth and in fact that it's not really being pursued. That's one of the reasons I really appreciate the private school that my grandchildren have gone through, People's Cathedral Primary School, because they've taught them more than just academics. They've
Right.
taught them a lot of life values, and of course, you know, the basis would be our Christian faith,
Very good.
where that is concerned.
Yeah.
But you know, it is important, I think, for us to really seriously address this. I agree with you, Maxine, that we're hearing a lot of buzzwords, and it's like people get up in the morning and there's a buzzword, and they get up the next morning, there's another one, but no thinking, no rationalization, no due diligence is being put into the matter to see
That's
how
right.
we would move forward here, how we would do this, how we would do that. So, you know, I wish we had more time. To be honest with you, it's just that we keep running out of time on these shows because this is really important. This is, you know, I mean, a lot of parents are facing this, a lot of children too. You know, what are they
Yes.
going to do with their lives in the future? You know, after we're gone, we're not going to be here forever. After we're gone, they go around the island, they see jobs at gas stations and supermarkets, and they hear, you know, we're building all of this fancy new Dubai or Abu Dhabi on steroids in Bridgetown, and all that we're being trained for is to be maids or lawn maintenance
Gardeners.
to gardeners or something
Yeah.
in there. And our young people, when I talk to our children, 13, 15, 17, have no interest in that. They're not interested in that. They're looking for other things in life. They want to make a life of their own. They want to come to a place where they do not live like they see us living, you know, hand to mouth, so to speak. You know,
Right.
they don't want
Right.
that. They want a better life. They want to be able to be wealthy, and they're striving toward that. And I think they need our help in doing that. Well,
Yes, sir.
I can't even say we'll give you all the last word, because your last words were, you Apostle, you hit the single, and Maxine played
Yes,
a
sir.
number of fours and sixes, and I can't keep my bowling up, but you all really making too many runs, and you
Yeah.
know, so
I said,
the
I
the
said we can
analogies,
declare
huh?
now.
The analogies, yeah, we
Yeah.
can declare the innings now, and I just love it, you know. It's so interesting. But
Time
Maxine,
flies when we get a serious discussion.
oh yes,
That's what
but
it is.
there's one thing
That's
before
true.
we go, Maxine,
That's
that
true.
crossed my mind, and I just wanted to put this out to you, because you were never a minister of foreign affairs before you became a minister of foreign affairs.
Well, I did actually say to once I was in a meeting, and that's why I said, depending on your background, and I listened to, there was some issue we were dealing with, and we were going around the table, and I was listening very quietly to my staff. And when they were finished, I spoke. And I literally saw this young lady's mouth open and eyes open. And I said, this is my background. So fortunately for me,
Mhm.
I had done graduate work in international relations as part
Okay.
of my graduate training. But I also took the time, I read a lot. And you know, so
And
in
that's
essence,
key.
I read and listen and educate. You see, that thing about
That is
continuous
key.
education is so
Yeah.
critical. And I am sure both of you as pastors don't assume that you know
Oh
as of
no.
when you
That's
started
correct.
out, that you learned and you
Correct.
imbued everything was poured
No.
into your brains, and you stuck.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But you also learn, and I always tell people, I always have what I call a learning mentality. So I would
Yep.
listen to you do a presentation, and I would say, okay, that's a good way to present an idea. I might listen to you on the substance, Apostle. You know, this is the content there is something that I can pull, because there's always that desire to know and understand and develop.
Yes,
but when people
yes.
become authorities and the final arbiter of everything, or on, I know all, and
That's a dangerous place to be.
Exactly.
That's a dangerous place. But that's why I asked. I don't know if I asked it, but that's why I put it out to you, because even in spite of your background, you had no experience as a minister of foreign affairs. You had to get into the driving seat, so to speak, depend on those around you, and build your own capacity, your own capacity to articulate things in a manner that would be beneficial for where our country is concerned.
Critically, to recognize that there were technocrats there whose advice I needed to hear, and understand. Even if in some instances, I might have had a position or a set of knowledge that person may not have. Generally, there were the people who had the experience over time.
Yes. And I can't. What is the old saying that a person with experience is never at the mercy of a person with education or knowledge? I can't remember how it goes.
I would have to research.
I would have to look that back up. I can't remember what it was. Or the person with experience is not at the mercy of the person with a degree, or something like that. But I think we underestimate, especially in our educational system, the critical importance of experience. And I think that is an area that we need to pay attention to. Well, Apostle, thank you. Maxine, thank you again. It's been such a pleasure sharing the platform with you again tonight. And I know I haven't been able to cover every single thing. I hope Marcia will forgive me for that. I think she's a believer, so she will have to forgive me for that. But it has been such a pleasure. It always is a pleasure having Maxine, yourself on the show. I honestly do want to tell you that I do learn a lot when you're on the show, and tap into your experience and your knowledge so much. And as you as well, Apostle, I thank God. The only place I say that people are not learning, I know of 3 locations in Barbados. One of them is in St. Peter. I can't remember what it's called, but Apostle, you would probably know the one out there by All Saints Church, what that one is called. There's one in Bridgetown called the Westbury. Mount Pleasant. There's one in Bridgetown called Westbury. And there's one is that St. Philip or Christchurch, called Coral Ridge. That's the only place that I know nobody's learning anything. As long as I'm alive, I am in a learning curve. And sometimes my wife has to correct me and teach me how to engage my grandchildren differently. And it's not an easy process in terms to, shifting, but at the end of the day, that word comes back again, Apostle, wisdom. Wisdom. All right. So thank you both. It's been a real joy and a pleasure having both of you on. And Maxine, thank you so much for engaging us with that. What would I call it? Cadre of CIRCUS experiences. I don't know if Dave got anything where that is concerned, but oh God, help us. Again, Apostle, thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen,
you're welcome, sir.
Thank you all for being with us again tonight. It has been my pleasure to be the host of this show. And I want to say, have a great night, a great weekend, and God bless all of you.
Good night. Good night.
I was a joke. The study cover only back and forth. But I share my comment. Look how we're going up. I can be Godzilla. I can shoot the Joker. I can send in a city far and wide. I can make them make my jump around and hide. Crocodile, how up I'm in this year. Crocodile, stand and make body wear. I say the loud cat beat, my lyrics are my melody. And then we got themselves, yes, the war with the drum. Crocodile, how up I'm in this year. Crocodile, stand and make body wear. I say the loud cat beat, my lyrics are my melody. and everybody knows that's the way we live. I tell you. Woo! Yeah! Uh-huh! I said the love that's me. The day I jump in on like a monkey. I said the love that's me. The day I use it too much energy. But then here I tell them, and the lips I share it. Lord, I said it. Kick, I said it. What? All right. Aha! Do that! I say, when I die, don't jump. I nearly went on the one city up. I say, you can ask at me. The guy that can see and said of me. But I say, I tell them, I can be a winner. I can make them shiver. But I can't move it up. Wait, bum, bum. The work I'm in it here. The landing for me with. I said aloud at me. I learned some melody. And everybody knows that the whole in the club. The work I'm in it here. The landing for me with. I said aloud at me. I learned some melody. And everybody knows that the whole in the club. The work I'm in it here. The landing for me with. I said aloud at me. I learned some melody. And everybody knows that the whole in the club.